This second part of our event will be in English. And the first invited speaker with us today is Dr. Anna Abalkina, who received her PhD in economics from the University of Perugia in Italy, and currently works as a research fellow at the Free University of Berlin. She has recently focused on studying various aspects of hijacked journals and paper mills. Some of her works include studies of tolerance to plagiarism in the Russian scientific community, organization of dissertation mills in Russia, improper legitimization of hijacked journals through citations, as well as advice on how to detect and avoid hijacked journals. She is also a prolific contributor to the Retraction Watch website, a blog that reports on retractions of scientific papers and related topics. Her talk will take approximately 45 minutes, and then at the end there will be 15 minutes available for Q&A. You can ask us questions here on site, and our audience online can send us questions through the platform Slido using the code 2509532. The code is available in the title of our first live stream as well. So, Dr. Abalkina, please, the floor is yours.
Oh, again, I would like to thank you for your invitation to this event, and I would like to talk about paper mills and authorship fraud in scientific literature and how open science can help us to detect fraudulent papers. So, what is authorship fraud? You maybe have heard of gift authorship when, well, some prominent researcher is included in the authorship list, or another case with omitted authorship when a researcher who invested in the research and in the paper was not included in the authorship list. In the case of paper mills, there is also an authorship fraud. But in this case, the real ghostwriters invested and wrote the paper, and also money with money involved. So authors pay for their authorship in the paper where they didn't, they didn't write. Also, what we have to understand about papers from paper mills, that there is evidence that such papers contaminate literature because these papers are accompanied with plagiarism, fabrication of data and images, or falsification of data and images. So it is not the case when the paper is scientifically sound, but I guess there are also the cases like that. But at least what is possible to detect are papers with the violation of academic ethics. So on this slide, you can see some offers to buy a paper, and nowadays with the development of internet and social media, it is very easy to become a legitimate author of a paper. So there are a lot of websites that offer authorship for sale. There are Telegram channels, WhatsApp chats, and so on, or Facebook groups where, well, there are a lot of offers to purchase the whole paper or just a place in the authors list. So what is the extent of the problem? How big is the problem? And when we speak about the extent, how many paper mills there are, we have to compare this number with something else. And the extent of the problem really depends not only on numerator, so how many papers from paper mills, but how with what denominator we compare this number. So, and this is a question: what is numerator and what is denominator, to understand what is the extent of paper mills nowadays. So if we look at numerator, so how many papers originate from paper mills? And the answer is, we don't know. We know only about documented, registered cases of papers from paper mills. On your right, you can see the print screen of a Google Doc that some independent scholars collect the data on different paper mills and number of papers. And so in this kind of collection of paper mills, there are more than 7,000 papers from paper mills, and all these cases are registered. But there are also some other paper mills, maybe with individual papers detected or individual paper mills detected. But all these papers have something in common. All of them, quite all of them, have a lot of signs of academic misconduct. If we look at the number of retracted papers that originate from paper mills, we find that much less papers retracted, because publishers, they don't find misconduct in such papers, or because publishers retract fraudulent papers due to other reasons, like violation of peer review, fabrication of data, and so on. And also, it is important to note that most papers from paper mills are detected due to manipulation of peer review, plagiarism, fabrication, and because of their similarities, for example, of template similarities. So this is the data from Retraction Watch database. This is the graph of number of papers retracted with a reason of paper mill origin. And we can see that, well, not so many papers were retracted because of their paper mill origin. And we can also note that this reason started to appear since only 2020, like 2 years ago. Before, papers from paper mills were retracted due to other reasons. And also, what we can note nowadays, that many publishers started to retract papers from paper mills, and these are just on this slide. You can see some Retraction Watch blog posts with names of publishers which massively retracted papers, like 500 papers at the moment, or just hundreds papers, and so on. So publishers also started to investigate the cases about the paper mill origin. Nowadays, the detection of paper mill papers is a challenge, because actually a journal or a publisher can detect papers from paper mills due to peer review fraud. And unfortunately, in many journals of many publishers, the peer review is not open. and the audience, academic community, is not able to detect the honesty of peer review. So it's only journal or publisher can do that. But in case of several journals or some journals that have open review, we can look at some anomalies of peer review, and I will show you some cases later. So journal also can see some common submission practices, like with the title of the files, the same emails, and so on. Or a journal can see the request of the authorship changes after acceptance of the manuscript. And academic community also can detect papers from paper mills, and nowadays there are several possibilities how it's possible to do. The researchers can see common structures and templates of papers, plagiarism, fabrication, falsification of text, data, images, citation manipulation, and authors detection. So if you can see what is possible to do nowadays is to see some anomalies during peer review, or some anomalies in papers themselves. So nowadays there is no possibility to detect a scientifically sound paper with authorship slots for sale, because there are no anomalies in such a paper. It would be very difficult to detect such paper mill papers. So this is about Numerator. So there are documented cases, and only just a short part of, and just not all papers is possible to detect because of the problem of because academic community doesn't have access to submission process and can't analyze submission process of papers, and also because there are a limited number of independent sleuths and investigators who actually find paper mill papers. And if we look at the denominator, well, many publishers, they say, well, nowadays the problem of paper mills is not so important, because if we compare the number of documented papers with the all scientific literature, well, this is really not important. That is why it's very important to see the denominator, because if we look at the journal perspective, the extent of the problem is much higher. So the COPE, together with STM, they did a survey of publishers this year, and they found that the percent of suspicious papers submitted to journals of 6 publishers ranges from 2 to 46%. And this is absolutely another level of the problem. So 46% of all papers submitted to a journal were suspicious, and probably they originated from paper mills. Another way how we can look at the extent and the challenges of paper mills is to analyze the number of detected papers and not published, detected suspicious papers and not published, and published papers that then it was found that they were originating from paper mills. So again, I cite the study by COPE and STM, and this study shows that these publishers were able to detect 139 papers, suspicious papers that were not published, and later in those journals, 457 papers were detected as suspicious and with a significant violation of academic misconduct. It means that currently journals are not able to see suspicious papers and desk reject them. There is another aspect of this problem. Why actually authors do that? What is the author perspective? Well, because of the organization of research output monitoring in different countries, because publications are needed for promotion or to get financial bonus, because of their contract requirements, because of grants, or because of publish and perish publication pressure that many scholars feel. But nowadays we can see about these reasons only according to some evidence and according to some case studies. There are no studies on authors and the reasons why authors use these services. And now I would like to speak about several cases of paper mills that I was able to detect and to show you the inner work of paper mills. So this is the screenshot of one company that is called Scientific Publications that guarantees the publication of scientific works in journals indexed in international databases, and also it promises to increase personal individual Hirsch index. I call this company Tano Pro as a paper mill because this company uses at least 23 suspicious and weird email domains. Tano Pro is one of the email domains that this company uses. And well, this is not a classic paper mill because they actually don't sell authorship slots. At least I didn't find the confirmation of this fact, so I can prove this fact, even if they advertise this service. But what is possible to see that this company offers rewriting of a paper and guarantees publication of such papers. So the business is to receive a low quality paper and to write it in order to submit to a journal. So anyway, this includes authorship fraud because some ghostwriters participate in this paper but are not included in the authorship list. And it was possible to detect more than 1,000 papers submitted by this company since 2019. So I create here the list of papers. Now I included in this database 644 papers, and so this is work in progress. And you can see on this on this print screen the different types of emails, weird emails that were used to submit papers. They are really strange, and they include some country extensions like of China, for example, but authors were not from China. There are also extensions from India or other countries, and some weird emails that include the name of famous universities and so on. And it is possible to confirm this network of emails because in one paper it's possible that authors use 3-4 different emails belonging to the company. And so this is with snowball method, it was possible to detect at least 23 email domains. But here, when detecting these papers, and it's quite easy technical problem to detect all these papers. But then there is another problem, because actually suspicious emails are not enough to consider papers fraudulent. Well, that could be a broker company that submits papers with weird emails, but maybe the papers are scientifically sound. And when thinking of this problem, I contacted Dorothy Bishop, who is a professor in Oxford. She's a professor in psychology. And I asked her to look at 6 papers published in the Journal of Community Psychology. And the idea is that the journal has open peer review, and all peer reviews can be openly accessed in Publons. Now it's a part of Clarivate. And so we scrutinized these 6 papers, and we looked also at peer review and what we found. So Professor Bishop, she found that all 6 papers had serious flaws because they have lack of ethical approval. And also we found that in the reference list of these papers, there were a lot of citations to predatory journals or citations to suspicious venues where fake identity of reviewers were included in the editor board. As for peer review, it was very suspicious because all peer reviews, so we could find 5 peer reviews for 5 papers that were openly accessed, but all of them had superficial comments like, please change keywords, please improve your conclusions or your abstract or correct typos, or just improve your reference list. What was also something weird and not possible, that the majority of these peer reviews were submitted on the same day. And then when we looked at the identities of these peer reviewers, because it was also possible to know who reviewed this paper, we found that most likely these identities are fake. And also some of the peer reviewers were members of editor board of one suspicious venue. So this is how these peer reviews looked like. You can see that the paper actually had 2 rounds of peer reviews, and in the first round, reviewer report 1 and reviewer report 2 were submitted on the same day. The decision letter by the journal also was issued the same day. And if we look at the second round, we can also see that the reviewer report, both reviewer reports were submitted on the same day, and decision letter by the editor-in-chief of this journal was issued on the same day. And here is an example of such peer review, and you can see 1 to 3 are some comments of peer reviewer. So you can see that they are superficial. Please improve the quality of figures and tables. It is necessary to revise the conclusion section, and most of the references are too old. So there are no comments about the paper, the methods, hypothesis, and at all. What we can also identify is the name of peer reviewer, and it's possible to click on this name, and we arrive to the page in Publons of this person. And what we notice that this person, actually, this identity, reviewed for several journals, also Journal of Community Psychology, and also Journal of Computing and Cultural Heritage. Well, it's journals of different disciplines. And also we notice that actually here there are no publications of this person, and there is no Hirsch index, and the works are not cited because there are no works. And then if to search this name on internet, you can find this name as a member of editorial board of one scientific journal devoted to psychology. And there is no possibility to find this name anywhere else. And what we also found that there are a lot of citations to this venue in the papers submitted to the Journal of Community Psychology. And so we did a conclusion that this actual person doesn't exist, like many other names here. This is most probably is a fake names of fake members of editorial board. What we did next with Professor Bishop, we wrote a paper about this case, and we decided to submit it to the Journal of Community Psychology. So it was kind of a stress test, and we wanted to understand if editor-in-chief or editors really read the papers that are submitted to the journal. And several days later, we've got a desk reject with a notice fatally flawed. And so we failed to confirm our hypothesis that the author, the editors don't read a paper submitted to the journal, and there is now investigation by Valley, the publisher that publishes this journal, but actually we don't see any progress during, I think, 3 months since we first notified about the case to the publisher. There is another case of a paper mill, that is called International Publisher. This is a Russian-based paper mill that works internationally and sells authorship slots to scholars from all over the world. They are active since December 2018, and the price range for authorship varies from 180 euros to 5,000 euros, and they openly offer papers for sale and authorship slots, like a place in the authorship list. And they offered about 2,000 papers for sale during several years. So this is an example of an offer. And here we can see the approximate title of the paper. And if to search in Google for the title of this paper, we can see, well, there is a paper with a similar title. We have a publication year. It also matches the number of co-authors. There are 5 co-authors in the author and 5 co-authors in the final paper. And we have the country of the journal, and we can confirm in Saimago that this journal originates from the same country. So each offer contains important information that can be used to identify papers. And I collected such offers since 2019, but then I found that there is also a web archive, and scholars around the world, they collected these offers also. And then I try to identify all these papers, and I collect them in a Google Doc, and they are can be openly accessed. So as of September this year, 460 papers were identified that were published in 152 authentic journals and 3 hijacked journals. Hijacked journals are illegitimate journals, legitimate publishers. It's like scammers. They mimic the original journals, and they publish papers for a certain fee. And up to date, more than 6,000 co-authorship slots were sold. And these papers were co-authored by more than 800 scholars from at least 39 countries and affiliated with more than 300 universities. And if you look at the number of co-authorship slots and countries, you can see that this paper mill actually orients to the scholars from post-Soviet countries, but also to Middle East and China. I would like to say that actually this company continues to offer co-authorship slots even after the beginning of the war. And there is confirmation of that, and that scholars from all over the world continue to purchase co-authorship slots even after 24th of February this year. There is evidence that papers that were ghostwritten by this paper mill contain fabrication of data and plagiarism. Here on your left, you can see the offer of a paper, and actually it says that one co-author from China, and in the real paper you can see that it's true that the first co-author is from China. And also in approximate abstract, it says that you can insert your own city. And there are, at the end, there is a Wuhan city in China in the paper. This is another case of fabrication and plagiarism. This paper that was submitted to Asian Journal of Water, Environment and Pollution contained a lot of information about some leaf fall timing and about trees in Detroit. And you have some numbers, and they are identical to numbers that I found in one study about trees on the Soviet street of Orenburg in Russia. And so it was just, they took one study, translated into English, and changed the country, the street, and the city. One can ask, okay, but why paper mills are able to publish these papers in journals, how it's possible. In this graph, you can see that the majority of papers were submitted to one journal. The majority cases. So it means that journals, they have no possibility to see the differences, the templates now, the similarities between papers, because this paper mill uses the approach one paper, one journal. And so all recommendations how to detect paper mills, so look at the similarities between papers and how the papers are organized, their templates. So this doesn't work at all. And so this graph shows that all publishers were affected by the paper mills. And also this paper mill uses dishonest practices because it has some suspicious collaborations with editors of some journals, because these editors, or they were co-authors of papers with authorship slot for sale, or they were editors of special issues or academic editors of the papers. Or another case where actually this paper mill has suspicious collaboration with the journal itself and just buys the whole special issue. There is an offer that says that there are like 10 papers for sale in one issue, and it was possible to detect 9 papers that were published in the same issue. And there is a predictor of such papers because if we look at the affiliations of the authors, we can see that such affiliations and the title of the paper are very, very suspicious, because it speaks about some polymer composites, and the paper is co-authored by somebody in medical university and somebody in financial university. And so it means that these people might not be familiar with each other because they just buy co-authorship on the internet. They don't have common research interests. They are affiliated with different universities. It means that there is a diversity of affiliations per paper. They specialize in different disciplines and might not specialize in the topic of the paper. And also there is absolute total alphabetical disorder. And normally there is a strict number of co-authors in one paper, from 3 to 5. This is how actually this paper mill operates. What is also important that when the information about this paper mill went online, because together with me there was Retraction Watch, it published an investigation about this paper mill in December last year, and me as well in December last year. The paper mill reacted. They created an archive on their website. Here you can see archive 2018, 19, 20, 21. They collected about 100,000 entries in these archives, mostly co-authored papers by post-Soviet authors. And it resulted, unfortunately, a lot of peer comments about those papers, how it's possible that we can find this paper in archive. So this is absolutely fake, and it was done by a paper mill in order to disorient investigation and mislead the investigation. So how I would like to conclude that there are a lot of challenges nowadays with paper mills. So the current system of paper mill detection should be regularly monitored and improved, because the COPE recommendations are not enough to detect paper mill papers. A lot of paper mills are still not discovered, there are not enough efforts taken by publishers to investigate the papers, and the work is done by a limited, actually, number of independent sleuths and research integrity experts who do this job pro bono for free. Open science helps a lot to detect paper mill papers, as I showed you in the case of open peer review in the Journal of Community Psychology. It was great help to prove that weird emails can be a predictor of suspicious papers. But also, unfortunately, the transparency is not working because the activity of paper mills was described by a lot of journals, by Science, Nature, Retraction Watch, numerous academic papers and blogs, but it doesn't make paper mills disappear. Paper mills change their strategy, like in the case of international publisher, they started to publish archives on their website. They changed also their website, but paper mills, they don't disappear. And also, journals' reaction is a challenge for academic community because, many members of academic community that faced the fact that publishers, they even don't reply to the messages about suspicious papers, or publishers and journals, they reply but not investigate, or they investigate but they don't find evident cases of academic misconduct. And this is a big challenge because these papers are still in academic literature. They are cited and they can mislead. Thank you for your attention, and I tell some other stories about paper mills on my Twitter.
Dr. Abalkina. Okay, we extinguished the echo. So, Dr. Abalkina, thank you very much for your inspiring talk. Now I would first ask our audience here in person, does anyone has a question for Dr. Abalkina? Okay, so obviously there are no questions. There is a question that was submitted through Slido, and all our I would like to restate for our viewers online that you can send us questions through Slido with using the code that is available in the title of this video. And there is a question online saying, have you found any differences in fraudulent practices between different scientific disciplines? In which areas are they more common than in others?
Well, it's difficult and easy question to answer at the same time. So most papers are detected in medicine and biology, biomedicine, but it could be, but we don't know actually if it is because of more papers in this discipline, or because more papers are detected in this discipline, because more sleuths and investigators are working in this discipline. So we don't know. We know that actually there are paper mills that are working in different disciplines. That are, some paper mills are specialized in a certain discipline, others no. And in the case, for example, of international publisher, it is the case that how this actually paper mill works. All the offers they have on their website are just titles of papers. These papers are not written. They were not submitted and accepted by a journal. And this paper mill sells the title, and then when this title is sold, then the paper mill asks to ghostwriter to write this paper. So the case for a paper mill is to find those disciplines and those topics that are mostly requested by the scholars. And in this case, the most frequent case is the paper in like education in universities, because all scholars, they actually teach in universities. So it's difficult to answer this question. Well, papers in all disciplines. There are papers in all disciplines. But what I can say that it could be some country differences, for example. Yes, it could be, at least as per what we see.
We have another question that was submitted online, and it says, how can a researcher be more aware or educated about fraudulent journals? Is the open science the right approach to it?
So there are different types of suspicious journals. There are, so to say, predatory journals that don't guarantee quality peer review, that can have fake editor boards that can inflate impact factors of the journal to attract more scholars. And also there are hijacked journals. I mentioned them during my talk. These are scam journals, just cyber criminal journals. And actually about hijacked journals, it's rather easy, because in partnership with Retraction Watch, I started to create the list of hijacked journals online. It's an open access list. You can just find the list of hijacked journals, and this is regularly updated nowadays. This is a big problem nowadays, because some journals of small publishers or individual journals are frequently hijacked, and they are advertised as legitimate venues, and many scholars became the victim of such journals. As for predatory journals, there are also the lists of such journals that can be accessed online and that can be checked. But you can be, well, you can always look at the papers published in this journal, at the references they do, or the editor boards, and analyze, understand that the journal is suspicious. Because if predatory journal, normally they publish a lot of papers, and the number of papers increases a lot, and so you can see some anomalies in this journal. So
okay, thank you. And yeah, I would like to conclude this session with my own question, which is, do you perhaps have data on whether paper mills target more open access journals, or they access more paywalled journals? So meaning, is the open science movement now, is it a risk that more paper mill papers will be published, or does it decrease the risk?
thank you very much for this question. So I can't tell you for sure if they target more open access journals or not. We can see both, that they target open access publishers a lot, and this is a serious problem, especially with open access special issues, and it can be traced with different publishers, and this became really an issue nowadays because these publishers are infiltrated with special issues and with problematic papers published in these special issues. But it's possible to see also that paper mills target wide range of journals, also in journals on subscription basis, and also journals that don't belong to these oligopholistic publishers, but small publishers. And sometimes it's possible to see that the paper is suspicious because it has weird email, very suspicious authorship list, but it's not possible to check this paper to look it inside because there is no access to this paper. So this can be also a problem for investigators to see the problems in such papers.
So with this